I'm Aura, and I'm the host of Collective Mind.
Hi, I'm Onyx, and I'm the host of Primal Pack.
Why are you making fun of me?
I'm not, I was copying you. They say
Yeah.
copying or imitation is the best form of flattery.
I guess. Oh my gosh, I'm not showing the game. I did that last time too.
Just record a whole episode without recording anything.
Okay. Now the game is there. And I think it was recording game audio, despite not recording the game, so that's good. So today, we are going to be talking about a topic while I do something boring in Dofus, which in this case is running around and unlocking all of the different zaps. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And getting XP from running around. Which I typically do right away at the beginning when I start a new character. So I'm going to place it right there, so I know where I'm going. But the topic that Onyx and I are going to be talking about is denial in systems. Primarily in systems.
Why we gathered you here today.
At least primarily in systems is the context. I'm also going to be gathering metals to try to level up my alchemist profession as we go. So hopefully I didn't miss any when I was running around aimlessly. Not aimlessly, towards a zap, but still. Aimlessly, yeah.
I'm just going to be hunting on the side because Collective out-leveled me a little bit with hunting on their own. So I'm going to be catching up some.
Oh yeah, because I was fighting PVs.
Which is fine, like it's only 2 levels, it's nothing major.
Yeah.
It's not even like a ton of XP or whatever, it's just a thing.
I can't get that sage yet, that's frustrating.
It's
Frustrating. Yeah.
You're adorable.
Okay. So, first of all, one of the most important things I would argue to know is that denial is extremely common in systems and doesn't mean that you're faking. Because that's what a lot of people kind of automatically think right away, is that that must be what that means, and that's not at all the case. The thing that means you're faking is if you're faking on purpose, and if it's not on purpose, it's not faking. And I'm going to talk more about that in a bit. But have you ever talked to a system for any significant period of time without them talking about faking, like feeling like they're faking? Or have you ever talked to a system that says they've never felt that way?
No, I don't think I've actually ever done that. At least not one that said they haven't felt like it. There have been periods where like a system doesn't talk about it for a couple days maybe, but almost always there's just overwhelming feelings of faking at times, or imposter syndrome, or any number of things. It's just like, I don't feel like I deserve this diagnosis. Or even though I'm diagnosed, I'm clearly just tricking the person who's got way more schooling than me and has a doctorate/master's degree, and I'm obviously just that much smarter than them. To just trick them. And it's like, honey, I appreciate the denial, but no. Their job is literally to see through that.
I've actually started saying that it's practically part of the diagnostic criteria. It's so common for DID and OSDD to think that you're faking.
I don't think that it's part of the diagnostic criteria, but it is one of the symptoms usually of having a system, is feelings of like being fake.
Yeah, because there's so much amnesia involved that you don't, like, no individual alter typically knows all of the symptoms. So it's very possible for a lot of alters to feel like they don't fit the criteria because they wouldn't by themselves. You know? Which brings me nicely to the next point. I'm gonna have to leave here first, but that's fine. For those who didn't know about the system for years, your brain was literally giving you amnesia about the disorder on purpose. You can have amnesia about your amnesia, for instance. It's one of the more complicated symptoms. You can literally forget things associated with the things you're forgetting. So you can be unaware that you're losing time. And you can be unaware that you're losing huge chunks of time. Your brain can cover it up like it does when you're dreaming and you don't realize while you're dreaming that things don't make sense. It's exactly like that. It's very, very common for typically the host, whoever doesn't know about the system yet, when they find out at some point, to be like, there's all of this evidence that I just didn't notice, and how could I have not noticed? Because it seems so obvious now. Like on a good day, when you're not dealing with denial, to think that. And the thing is that it's pretty much the same brain mechanism as when you're dreaming. Your brain's hiding the things that you would otherwise notice to realize that it doesn't make sense. And you don't realize it until you wake up. Once you're outside of the dream, then you're like, oh, that didn't make any sense. But while you're in it, your brain just draws your attention away from those details. It's also extremely common, if not practically always the case, that at least some other alters were hiding information from you on purpose. Again, if you're one of the ones who didn't know about the system for years. They were literally keeping that information from you on purpose. So that combined with your brain automatically doing that, that's a lot. That's a lot keeping you from noticing that stuff. And sometimes one or both of those mechanisms start to kick in again after you know about it, which is one of the things that causes denial, is your brain trying to flip that switch back on of, no, you're not supposed to know about this, so I'm gonna make you think it's not real, because that's one of the, like, once you've noticed all the details, thinking it's not real is one of the only things your brain can do. The other really big thing is if you experience something consistently that isn't normal, it will still feel normal to you because you experience it consistently. So unless someone specifically tells you that that experience isn't normal, you're just gonna kind of assume it is. That's just a thing brains do.
A good example of the denial thing, jumping slightly backwards to that last topic, is people who see red flags in relationships, or when you start falling in love with someone or whatever, and you're like, how did I not notice these little traits? Or when you start disliking someone, you start noticing a lot of negative things, and it's a lot of it is based on your perception of them without it necessarily being your fault for any of that. It's just like, I never noticed these good things because I was looking on the good side and making up good excuses for them because I was thinking positively. Like, being in a positive versus negative mindset, you will see things entirely different.
Yeah.
And that applies to denial too. When you're not in a good place, you can literally explain away every bit of evidence. You could explain away gravity if you were in a bad enough spot to not believe it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the rough part. There is no argument that is definitively, there is no way I can be faking this. Like, there's no definitive argument that you can never defeat at any time. Nothing is absolute like that in the world, sadly. does kind of suck at times.
Another complicating factor is that a lot of system things sound like quote-unquote normal things people say. So people say that they're a totally different person in different situations. They don't mean literally. But if you're experiencing symptoms related to being a system and you don't know, again, that that's not normal, you're hearing people say things like this all the time. So why would it seem not normal to you? So that's one example. There's also forgetting things. People talk about forgetting things all the time. And so people don't really talk about the extent to which that's normal and say anything about if it goes beyond that. There's also like inner monologue versus inner dialogue from alters is different, but people talk about like having conversations with themselves in their head. And so if you're thinking about it that way, you're not going to notice anything's weird. Or talking to yourself is a fairly normal thing that a lot of people do, at least sometimes. But they're literally talking to themselves. They're not talking to other alters in their head. People also talk about going into their own little world. And they mean that they're daydreaming or they're thinking about something in a lot of detail. They don't mean literally going into an inner world. So there's all kinds of things people say that kind of accidentally normalize system symptoms, which can make it seem like nothing's actually wrong because it seems normal. Does that make sense?
There's quite a few good examples of that, and I'm going to reference a song here that you and I have both talked about so much. I just forgot the name of it. It's the Linkin Park one.
I think it's Paper Cut.
Yes, Paper Cut. He always talks about the face beneath his skin, and like it goes beyond just referencing like the little voice in your head or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not just like the little voice. It's like it has more to it. It's more distinct, direct language that kind of you wouldn't normally use for something that's not like that. Like you wouldn't talk about the details of your inner world, about how dark it is and how a day-night cycle passes, or how there's so many people. It would just be like, oh, there's a lot of voices in my head and they're all telling me negative things kind of stuff. It'd be super bland and generic as opposed to having any sort of detail, distinction, or whatever. And that song has so many little things. Like, as far as I know, Chester was never diagnosed with DID. As far as I know. But that song, in and of itself, is very hard to come up with that kind of detail, even for a musician. It's hard to come up with things that you don't know about. And specifically, that song has so much in it that you just normally wouldn't know.
Yeah.
So, like, those are a lot of little ways you can do it, is just looking at your own language and the words you use, or other people's language, and looking at that.
Yeah. But these are all ways that when you're feeling a lot of denial, you might tell yourself, well, I hear people talk about this experience that I'm having all the time, so that's normal. There's no way that's a disorder type thinking. And I just thought of another one. There's all kinds of movies and literature and TV shows and stuff like that that personify different parts of yourself. Like an extremely common one is your conscience. So many things. Pinocchio personifies your conscience as a separate person from you to some extent, but still like a part of you. And things like that also affect... Am I just going slightly the wrong way? I was literally walking parallel to the place I needed to go.
Nice.
But it's okay. Because I'm almost to the other place I need to go. So I don't think I have any other examples of that off the top of my head, but I just thought of that one to add to my list that I had already made.
It's okay. Denial is a super hard topic to talk about because it's an ever-present thing for most systems. And even if there's not the underlying feeling of denial, every system that I know, and it doesn't mean you're faking if you haven't had this or can't identify it yourself. That's important to say. But almost every system I know has that moment of, I feel like I'm faking.
Yeah.
And I feel like this isn't real, and none of it is, and everything sucks. There's a couple problems with trying to look at yourself for the sake of denial, and a really big one is that you are biased about yourself.
Yeah.
You cannot have an objectively clear view of yourself, which makes any opinions you have on denial biased, because you are already going into it with the mindset of, I'm faking.
Yeah.
And you'll look for evidence to support that theory. And you'll get the confirmation bias because you'll find what you're looking for, because you can almost always find evidence to prove or disprove yourself.
Yeah.
And so your own opinion, and just your own, is not exactly the easiest or best thing to go off of, because that's not fair to you.
Yeah.
Your friends might see something in you that you don't. And a very common other example that almost everybody I know struggles with is self-image in, I think I'm disgusting, or a bad person, or hideous, or annoying, and everybody hates me. Like, so many things that people just have little mentalities for, and that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
It's just the way you see yourself, and you can't see the good parts, or the good parts that you do see, you write off because it feels like you're being arrogant about yourself, or you're bragging about something, or so many other little things. And it's not inherently fair to yourself to try and be your own judge and jury. It doesn't work well. So if you're having denial problems, ask a friend, you know?
Yeah, and that's what I'm about to get into, is some ways to help.
Sorry.
Because one of the first ones is something that I started out with, which is to remember that denial is normal and common. Because that helps some to remember that it's not, like, just feeling denial is not evidence of anything, except the fact that you're feeling denial. It doesn't mean anything other than that. Like, inherently, it doesn't mean anything else. So remembering that can be helpful, and then diagnosis, if possible, can be extremely validating. It can be helpful just as a tool to be able to remind yourself that a professional whose job it is to analyze your symptoms and find out if you have that thing told you that you do. Like, technically, if you don't and a professional told you that you do, like, it's their fault. It's not yours. Unless you went into that appointment literally thinking, I'm going to trick this professional into telling me that I have this diagnosis. If you didn't actively go into it thinking that, planning that, and even if you did, arguably, like, they should be able to tell that. That's their job. And there's system stuff that unless you did a bunch of research, it would be hard to make it sound legit because of how complicated it is. So a professional who knows what they're talking about will not be easily tricked, is my point. Especially if you can't get a diagnosis, but even on top of a diagnosis, finding someone who supports you and believes in your experience, even if they're not capable of diagnosing you or capable of telling you for sure that you have this thing. If they just believe you that you're not lying, believe you that you're experiencing something and that it sounds a lot like DID or whatever, that makes a huge difference. I'm level 30.
Nice. Me too.
Got a new spell.
I accepted XP until I hit level 30.
Okay. Oh. I just got Fervor, which attacks with water, but gives nearby allies shield.
Nice. What's the AP cost though?
3.
Nice. Can you use it twice on the same target?
Target necessary, twice per target, 3 times per turn.
What's the accumulation effect?
1.
Nice. So you can't shield more than one time, but
Yeah.
you can
Hit more than once with it, yeah. So that's really nice. Finding someone who believes in you will help so that when you're struggling, you can go to that person and say, hey, I'm struggling with denial again. And they can just remind you that they believe you. Because just having anyone who says they believe you can make a huge difference. And there are a lot of servers that you can go to and other community places like that where you can get people to tell you that they believe you about your experience, even if they can't tell you for sure if you have DID or not. Because again, only a professional can do that, but just telling you that they don't think you're lying, or that, like, you're not crazy. It sounds pretty similar to DID to me, but unfortunately I can't diagnose you type thing. That can make a huge difference. Something that we have done, that we continue to do when we think of it, is we made a list of evidence that supports the fact that we're a system, in addition to our diagnosis and all of those things, that we can just go through and read a list of evidence, which can be surprisingly powerful. Because that, like, reminding yourself that you believed yesterday, and this is why, can be really powerful. Reminding yourself of specific things that you know happened but don't remember is a big one. Or how, like in my case, I spend a lot of time co-conscious, so I spend a lot of time watching people act in a way I would never act, and talk in a voice that's different than mine, or not be able to talk, or things like that. And those types of things are on my list that I can look at and be like, well, why does Anna know all of the words to this song that I heard for the first time a year ago? Or like a month ago? Why does Jade act in ways that I would be uncomfortable or unable to act? Like, trying to get myself to attempt to do Jade's voice. Things like that, of just how else would I explain those things? Because I would have to explain them in some other way that makes more sense than DID. And that has helped me a lot when I remember to actually look at the list, and when I remember to add things to it and that kind of thing. But it has helped me a lot before. And I've suggested that to some other people and seen it help some other people too. This is a really, really big one that I tell people online all the time, and that I try to remind myself of regularly. You're not faking unless you're faking on purpose. You can't fake something on accident. You can be wrong about something, but it's not faking it if it's on accident. Even if that's the case, even if you're wrong, again, you wouldn't be faking, but even if you're wrong and it's not DID and it's something else, this might still be the best way for you to currently talk about your experience, and that's okay, as long as you don't, like, tell people you're diagnosed if you're not. Like, don't straight up lie to people. But if this is the best language that you currently have to explain your experience, and you think you're switching, for instance, and you find out that it's a different kind of dissociative amnesia or whatever else, like, I don't know, that would be person to person. If you end up finding out, like, getting diagnosed with something else, or in whatever other way, finding out that you're not actually a system, that it's explained by something else, that does not mean that you were faking, or that you were lying, or that you did anything wrong. This was still the best way for you to explain your experience, and that can be so helpful, just to be able to have, like, put words to your experience in any way. That can be a really, really powerful thing. So don't take that away from yourself for no reason. And then the last thing that I have on here is a big thing that I use all the time to remind myself that my denial doesn't just affect me. So, like, the way that I always say it to myself is, hypothetically, if it's even possible that the other alters are real, I don't want to invalidate their trauma. Because that's the thing that hits me the hardest, typically, is that trauma things that I know about couldn't have happened, because it's so hard for me to believe that those things happened. But I don't want to in any way communicate to any of the other alters in my system that I think they're lying to me about those things. I don't think they would do that to me. And if I'm going to try to say in bouts of denial that I'm, like, doing this for attention subconsciously or something like that, what I'm actually communicating to those alters is that I don't think their trauma is real, and that can really hurt. So I don't want to do that to them, even if it's only a possibility that I'm hurting real people. I don't want to do that. So I try really hard, even when I'm struggling with denial, to not invalidate anyone else's trauma, including my own. Do you have anything else you want to add? Okay. Well then, I'll finish getting these zaps off camera, but thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any other tips or tricks or questions in the comments or in our Discord server, which is linked in the description box below. We upload every 3 days currently, so make sure to subscribe and like and ring the bell so that you see when we post a new video and all those things. And thank you for watching, and have a great day. Bye!
Bye!